world of professional sports, there's this fairy tale story we all love to see. It's the hometown kid, drafted by the team they grew up cheering for. It's supposed to be perfect, but what happens when that storybook ending just doesn't happen? Today, we're taking a look at the winding, complicated, and really fascinating career of Louis Leblanc, a player who had the hopes of an entire city loaded onto his shoulders.
So this is the label that's kind of stuck to his career, right? A draft bust. It's a simple, harsh term, but it hides a much more complex story about pressure, about some really unconventional choices, and a journey that took him from the very top of the hockey world to a brand new life beyond it. To really get it, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning.
All right, so here's how we're going to break down his journey. First, his early days as a young prodigy. Then, that huge moment of being the hometown draft pick. We'll look at the unconventional path he took, how his career got derailed in the pros, and finally, what came next, life after hockey.
Okay, let's dive right in. Our story starts in Pointe Claire, a suburb of Montreal, which is, where a young Louis Leblanc first fell head over heels for the game.
So, Louis Leblanc was born into a really supportive family. His dad, Yves, was a chemist, and his mom, Marie, a piano teacher. And like so many kids growing up in Quebec, his life was all about hockey from day one. I mean, he was on skates at 3 years old and playing organized hockey by the time he was 5. This wasn't just some after-school hobby. It was a passion that would pretty quickly set him apart from everyone else.
By the time he was a teenager, it was obvious his talent was on another level. He joined the Lac St. Louis Lions, which is a big deal. For anyone who doesn't know, this is midget IAA hockey, the absolute top tier for that age group in Quebec, and it's known for pumping out future NHL stars. This is where he really started to become a household name in the scouting world.
And check this out. During the 2007-08 season, when he was just 16, he scored 54 goals. 54 in only 43 games. He led the entire league. That's not just good, that's completely dominant, and it officially put him on the map as one of the very best prospects in the entire country.
Okay, so all that incredible success as a kid, it was all building toward this one single defining moment, a moment that honestly seemed like it was ripped right out of a movie script.
The setting was just perfect. It's the 2009 NHL Draft, and it's being held at the Bell Centre, home of the Montreal Canadiens. So for a kid from the suburbs, the biggest day of his life is happening literally in his own backyard. You can just imagine the buzz, the excitement, and the pressure.
And then it happened. With the 18th pick in the draft, the Montreal Canadiens select Louis Leblanc. The hometown crowd just went absolutely insane. It was that storybook moment every kid who's ever put on skates dreams of. For a second there, it felt like anything was possible.
But you have to understand, this wasn't just any first-round pick. Leblanc was the first French-speaking player the Canadiens had taken in the first round in over a decade. In a market as passionate and hockey-obsessed as Montreal, this was a huge deal culturally. He instantly became this symbol of local hope. The pressure just ramped up to a whole new level. And right away, the expectations from the very top were sky high. The GM, Bob Gainey, wasn't just talking about his skill. He praised his character, and he pointed to a specific choice Leblanc had made, a choice to take a different path, as proof of his drive. And that unconventional path, it's a really key part of this whole story.
See, most of the top prospects from Quebec take the traditional route. They play in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. It's the well-worn path. But Leblanc, he chose to do something totally different, and it took him south of the border.
Just look at this timeline. In the 4 years right around his draft, he played for 4 different teams in 4 different leagues. I mean, he goes from the USHL in Omaha to keep his college eligibility, then to Harvard, then he comes back to the QMJHL, and finally lands in the AHL. It was a total whirlwind journey, but it showed he was committed to developing his game his own way.
So in 2010, Leblanc signs that first pro contract with the Canadiens, his entry-level deal. It's standard for young players, but as soon as you sign on that dotted line, you're officially a pro. And that decision means you can't play college hockey anymore. So just like that, his time at Harvard was over after only 1 year, which is what set him to the QMJHL. But here's the really remarkable thing. Despite all this bouncing around, he was successful everywhere he went. He was the Rookie of the Year in the USHL, then he goes to Harvard and becomes the Ivy League Rookie of the Year. He even helped Team Canada win a silver medal at the World Juniors. It really seemed like every step of his unconventional plan was working out perfectly. So after this wild journey through junior and college hockey, the time finally came to make the leap to the pros. And this, well,
This is where that narrative of limitless potential starts to slam into a much, much harsher reality. At first, it was all going according to plan. He makes his NHL debut in the fall of 2011, and just a couple of weeks later, he scores his first NHL goal. For a minute there, it really looked like the storybook was right on track. The hometown hero had arrived,
But his first season as a pro showed a pretty big difference. Down in the AHL, their top minor league team, he was a productive player, putting up good numbers. But up in the NHL, that scoring touch just seemed to vanish. The jump to the best league in the world was proving to be a serious challenge. You have to wonder, was it the pressure? Or was his game just not a fit for the fourth-line role he was given in the NHL?
And that pretty much became the pattern. Leblanc would get called up to the Canadiens, he couldn't quite secure a permanent spot, and he'd get sent back down. This is that dreaded life of a tweener, a player who's kind of stuck between two leagues. And in a hockey-mad city like Montreal, every single move was put under a microscope by the media, building this story that he was failing to live up to the hype.
the pressure wasn't just coming from the rink. In 2013, after another demotion, his girlfriend at the time, the tennis player Alexander Wozniak, went on Twitter to defend him. It was this really public display of the frustration that was obviously building behind the scenes. And of course, it just added more fuel to the media fire, turning his personal struggles into a public debate.
Eventually, the Canadiens just decided to move on. In 2014, he was traded to Anaheim for basically a late-round draft pick. A year after that, he signed with the Islanders. But it was the same story in both places. He just couldn't crack the NHL lineup. By the fall of 2015, his NHL dream was pretty much over, and he was released so he could go play in Europe.
And you'd think a fresh start in Europe might be the answer, but it didn't really go as planned. He ended up in the KHL, but his coach there gave this incredibly blunt and kind of weird criticism, saying he played un-Canadian. I mean, can you imagine hearing that? For a kid from Montreal, praised by a Canadiens GM for his character, that must have been a devastating thing to hear. And that final pro season in 2015-16 was just a whirlwind. I mean, look at this list. He played for 4 different teams in 3 different countries. It just shows you how unstable things had become. He was a true hockey nomad, just bouncing around the world, trying to find a home that he could never quite seem to find. So, after this really turbulent pro career, Leblanc's story takes one final, completely unexpected turn. And it's a turn that really redefines what it even means to be a success.
At just 25 years old, an age when most hockey players are just hitting their prime, Louis Leblanc decided he was done. He officially retired from the sport that had been his entire life up to that point. But he didn't just walk away from the game. He walked towards a new future. He went back to Harvard to finish his degree in economics. And this wasn't just about getting a piece of paper. It was about taking back control of his life, getting back on that academic path he'd chosen years before, and writing a brand new chapter, completely on his own terms.
And this really brings us to the big question of his whole story, doesn't it? Is success only measured by Stanley Cups and scoring titles, or can it be found in just navigating that insane pressure, making tough choices for your own future, and having the courage to build a new path when the first one closes? Leblanc's story really forces you to think about what success actually means. So, if we boil it down, Leblanc's story really teaches us a few things. First, that the weight of being a hometown hero, especially for a francophone player in Montreal, is an unbelievably heavy burden. It also shows us that the path to success is almost never a straight line. And maybe the biggest takeaway is that real fulfillment can be found not just in chasing an old dream, but in having the courage to redefine it and build a new one.
We hope you found this deep dive into the story of Louis Leblanc insightful. His journey is just such a powerful reminder of the human being behind the stats and the headlines. If you enjoyed this, please do us a huge favor and hit that like button. And definitely subscribe to the Daily Wonders channel so you don't miss our next one. Thanks for watching.